corruption or some of the information that people need just to be informed?
Well, it's quite tough because, as we've seen, there's actually very little. Okay, so I mean it's very tough because there's no real way to get information out at the moment. The mainstream media largely is afraid to touch issues for this because, of course, they can get sued. So they're fearful of their ad dollars and everything else. And so it's not really a conspiracy about the TV channels. It's just that they have a huge liability in this. So with the papers being controlled, absolutely. And it's a travesty that nobody wants to address this issue of media concentration. So what do we have? Well, we have social media, but then, of course, it's cat flushing toilets and it's everything else combined in that. So, is there any reliable way to get the word out? Well, we haven't really seen it. The only way that we see now, and this is one of the things that Charles and I have been looking at, is doing small-scale meetings. And this takes us back to essentially the 1930s of what did you have to do to deal with the situation with robber barons. Well, you had the same situation in which the only way to get information directly to the people is to have small-scale discussions. And I really think that's the only way to go, is to have small meetings, town hall meetings with concerned citizens and discuss some of this. It's no longer possible for the mainstream media just to control the only flow of information, but to reach out and have a real discussion about things. That's about the only way to go at the moment. But the other big hope, of course, is that print media is slowly dying, and so the media concentration in New Brunswick is going to be less important. Nobody reads the newspapers, hardly. So the reality is that the diminishing ability to control all those sources of media are only going to work in people's favor.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
In regards to social media, is there any proven format that you would suggest that people can use to, I guess, unify a voice for a particular cause?
No, and this is what we've seen, and this is what we've been discussing a little bit among other political activists in the province as well. The fact is, on social media and social media groups, essentially, you're only preaching to the converted. Those that go on to Brunswick Not For Sale, well, it's 2,000 people, but it's the same 2,000 people. And every time you do a political event and only advertise there, that's the only people you're going to reach. And so what we've seen is the only way to reach out is to go through other forums and to talk to people. And one of the things I think that is really missing is an understanding that there is a lot of disaffected voices out there, some who have access to the internet and some that don't. But there has to be a way of reaching out to those people across these party lines. And one of the things that I see is that most of the social media is dominated by a few shrill voices. And I think this is one of the failures that currently exist in terms of the left, is that they're not really able to get out and reach either into their base or into those disaffected voices. And we've had that discussion with David, is that, there are a lot of Greens out there in New Brunswick, but they're Hunter Greens, they're Fisher Greens, they're roll up your sleeves and work in the garden Greens. And, it's that group of disaffected voices that need to be reached out to. And I think the best way to do it is small-scale meetings, town hall, and just old-school political organization, beating the streets and talking one-on-one to people. It's a small province in terms of numbers, with a big geography. So and that's why we were doing our great resource giveaway in the format that we did. But the problem, of course, is you need to have the resources to be able to do that. And I think that Charles, I, and Rod Cumberland were able to reach out to so many people because, first of all, three very different voices. An Anglo who's done most of his work international, and and an Acadian filmmaker from the north, and Rod is the ordinary Joe guy who just happens to be a deer biologist. And I think this is sort of the approach that needs to be taken. It needs to be a very broad-based approach of getting all of those people under one big tent. And we tried as much as we could over the last year to try and bring everybody under it and realize that the way that the system has been working is to make sure that all the Brunswickers are divided. And that's just the way to do it, to just keep everybody at everybody's throats and then buy off the rest with small-scale patronage. And that's what it is. I mean, the goodies that are handed out are minuscule. right? And this is the way to buy off a large chunk of the population, by giving them the few goodies that are left. But there's nothing left in the bag, right? And that's the problem. And the people that are getting, that are disadvantaged by the system are growing every day in numbers. And so I think that reaching out through small town meetings and going out and hitting the road is the only way to go, to have a very strong message of what it means to bring New Brunswick back to the people. And I think if the People's Alliance is able to solidify a really strong message about that, and then go out and start organizing, town by town, and you see the reaction. I think there were some great steps taken with the Voice of the People tour, but again, it was quite preachy in terms of the format that was used. The same thing with what we did with the Great Resource Giveaway. It was more of an information than a give and take. And I think there needs to be these real sort of kitchen table discussions and give and take that needs to occur. And that means bodies, and that means numbers, and that means, you know, sufficient resources to be able to do it on a daily basis.
Excellent. We're going to let you go soon. Will you leave us with one of your personal favorites, or what your personal opinion as to what can the average person do moving forward?
Well, the only thing really to do right now is to look at trying to form some policies that take the province back. The one thing that I think that we can really push on all together right now is to look for accountability for ADCON. There needs to be a criminal case brought, and it's a clear-cut case of fraud that was perpetrated by ADCON. It's a clear-cut case of conflict of interest on behalf of the Premier, and that needs to be pushed forward. One thing that needs to be done is to look into what has the RCMP actually done to investigate, or the Freddie Police. So the Fredericton Police, and somebody should put into a letter immediately and ask, what has the Fredericton Police done in the ADCON case? And to take the Auditor General's report, and that is a powerful instrument to be used, and to demand accountability. Right? This is the time to put pressure on every MLA to demand that there's accountability. And the same thing on every single breach of trust issue that comes up. The corruption in the province has to stop. And it's very simple as everybody starts. And if you saw what goes on here in Ukraine in terms of ordinary civil society groups or investigative journalists, they expose every single corruption scheme and they don't let it go. What they've done now is grab their corrupt politicians and they throw them into trash cans. Now, I'm not calling for vigilante justice, but at least somebody besides Charles the Blogger to ask those tough questions. Right? We don't know how long we're going to have Charles. So we need to turn into an entire province of Charles the Blogger. And maybe that's what we can do, get them to take that. Harassing every single MLA on some of these tough questions. And I think that's the way forward. And if everybody just said, okay, we're going to focus on a couple of things. One is to demand accountability of the government. That will really start to make change. The other thing is to demand to know how natural resources are being used. And I think that's in everybody's interest. Everybody has a forest in their backyard. Everybody has, you know, a potential place that could be fracked. Everybody has a place that a mine could be put on. And the fact is that if we start demanding to know why the province is not collecting royalties, for example, on its extractive industries, and demanding to know where the lumber is going, you know, we'd be a lot further ahead in terms of money coming back into the budget. And one of the things that people don't realize is that those assets that were taken out of the province and the money that was stolen from ADCON, those could be easily put back into the budget. And that's what happened in other places. Billions of dollars have come back and been put straight into the state budget.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. We want to thank you very much for joining us. Keep safe and keep doing the good work that you're doing over there. It's appreciated. I'm just going to ask for a round of applause for Donald Bowser.